The emperor who feared nothing, except his own son. The dragon emperor feared nothing. Not war, not death, not rebellion. His name was Emperor Kale, ruler of the largest empire in the galaxy. His wings were wide enough to shadow cities. His black scales were harder than steel. When he spoke, entire planets listened. When he roared, enemies surrendered before battle even began. He had burned fleets. He had crushed rebellions. He had defeated monsters that lived between stars. But inside his own palace, he was afraid, not of enemies, not of traitors. He was afraid of failing his own son. Prince Arion was not like other dragon children. From the day he was born, the palace doctors noticed something different. He did not cry loudly like other hatchlings. He did not enjoy loud celebrations. When servants dropped metal trays, he would cover his ears tightly and shake. Bright lights hurt his eyes. Too many voices made him panic. When other dragon children trained in fire control, Arion stayed silent. He did not roar proudly. He avoided eye contact. Sometimes he moved his claws in small, repeated motions when he was nervous. The royal healers whispered words like defect and unstable. The generals whispered worse. The emperor heard everything. Every whisper felt like a blade. But he never showed weakness. In public, he stood tall and proud. He told the court that his son would grow strong in time. He ordered the best teachers, the best warriors, the best scientists to train and study the prince. Nothing worked. The more they pushed him, the more Arion withdrew. One evening, the grand hall of the palace was filled with nobles. It was the Festival of Flames, a celebration of dragon strength and power. The hall glowed with golden fire lamps. Music echoed loudly through the crystal walls. Hundreds of dragons filled the air with heat and noise. Prince Arion stood beside his father on the high throne platform. He looked small. The emperor noticed it immediately. His son's wings were tight against his body. His breathing was fast. His eyes moved quickly from light to light. "Stand tall," the emperor whispered quietly. Arion tried. The music became louder. Laughter exploded across the hall. A group of young dragon nobles roared playfully near the stage. The sudden sound was sharp and powerful. Arion flinched. His claws covered his ears. His tail flicked in panic. The bright lights from the ceiling reflected hard on his sensitive eyes. His scales began to flicker in unstable patterns. The court grew quiet. Everyone was watching. The prince started breathing too fast. His body trembled. A small cry escaped his throat. Not a mighty dragon roar, but a frightened sound. The emperor felt frozen. He had faced armies without fear. But now, he did not know what to do. If he picked up his son, the court would see weakness. If he did nothing, his son would suffer. The whispers began again. "Look at him. He cannot even handle music. This is the future ruler?" The emperor's chest burned with silent rage. Before he could act, someone stepped forward. A human. Small, fragile, completely out of place among giants. She wore simple palace servant clothing. No armor. No power. Her name was Lyra. Gasps filled the hall. No one approached the royal platform without permission. The guards tensed, ready to strike. But she moved slowly, carefully, without fear in her eyes. She did not look at the crowd. She looked only at the prince. She knelt in front of him. The emperor's eyes narrowed. One command from him, and she would be removed. But something stopped him. Lyra did not touch the prince suddenly. She waited. Then she spoke softly. "It's too loud, isn't it?" Her voice was calm, simple, not commanding, not pitying. Arion's shaking did not stop immediately, but his eyes moved toward her. She lowered her own gaze slightly, not forcing eye contact. "It's okay," she said gently. "We can make it smaller." She turned slightly toward the nearest servant and quietly signaled to reduce the music. The human musicians, confused but obedient, lowered the sound. The sudden decrease made the air feel lighter. Lyra slowly placed her hand near the prince's claw, not grabbing, just offering presence. "Breathe with me," she whispered. Slow. She inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly. At first, Arion's breathing was wild. But then, he tried to match her. In, out, in, out. The flickering of his scales slowed. His claws loosened from his ears. The hall was completely silent now. Hundreds of dragons stared in shock. The mighty dragon prince, calming down because of a human servant? Unbelievable. The emperor watched every second. He expected his son to push her away. He expected chaos. But instead, Arion's trembling stopped. His breathing became steady. He looked at Lyra, not with fear, but with trust. Something shifted inside Emperor Kale. He had ordered scientists to study his son. He had ordered warriors to train him. He had demanded strength. But this small human, she offered understanding. And it worked. Lyra slowly stood up. She bowed respectfully to the emperor. "I apologize, Your Majesty," she said calmly. He just needed quiet. The emperor did not speak immediately. The entire empire waited for his reaction. He looked at his son. Arion stood straighter now. Still different. Still sensitive. But calm. Safe. For the first time during a public event. The emperor turned his eyes toward the human maid. There was no fear in her face. Only care. And courage. In that moment, Emperor Kale realized something that frightened him more than any war. Maybe the problem was never his son. Maybe the empire simply did not understand him. And maybe a human did. The Dragon Emperor ruled the stars. But that night, for the first time in his life, his heart trembled. The empire began to fear. The next morning, the palace was not calm. It was restless. Whispers moved faster than light across the golden halls. A human touched the prince. She controlled the festival. She embarrassed the emperor. The dragon court did not forgive easily. Lyra expected punishment. Instead, she was summoned. Not by guards, not by generals, by the emperor himself. She was taken to the highest tower of the palace, a place few were allowed to enter. The walls were made of dark crystal. The ceiling opened to the stars. The air was heavy with power. Emperor Kale stood near the open sky balcony. Massive, silent, terrifying. His wings were folded behind him like a shadow of death. Lyra walked forward slowly and bowed. She did not shake, but inside, her heart was racing. "You approached my son without permission," the emperor said. His voice was calm. That was more dangerous than anger. "Yes, Your Majesty," Lyra replied softly. "Do you fear death?" She looked up slightly. "No." The emperor's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because he was suffering." Silence filled the tower. Wind moved through the high windows. The emperor stepped closer. His claws touched the stone floor with heavy sound. Dragon healers have failed for years. Scientists have studied him. Warriors tried discipline. You calmed him in minutes. He leaned down slightly. "Ow!" Lyra took a slow breath. "He is not broken," she said gently. "He feels everything more strongly. Sound is louder for him. Light is brighter. Emotions are heavier." The emperor stared at her. No one had ever explained it like that. "On Earth," she continued, "we have children like him. They're different. Not weak. Just different." The word echoed in the tower. Different. Not defective. Not shameful. Different. The emperor turned away. Outside, stars burned quietly. "If you are wrong," he said slowly, "you risk more than your life." Lyra nodded. "I understand." A long pause followed. Then the emperor made a decision that shocked even himself. "You will work directly with the prince." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. The emperor continued. "You will teach him, observe him, protect him." He turned back toward her. "And if anyone questions your position, they answer to me." The palace exploded with anger. A human, given direct access to the future ruler? The high general was furious. "This is weakness," he growled during a private council meeting. "The empire needs strength, not softness." Other nobles agreed. The prince must learn dragon ways. Humans are emotional creatures. This will destroy our image. But the emperor's command was final. And so, Lyra began spending her days with Prince Arion. At first, he did not speak much. He preferred silence. He liked sitting near the water gardens, where the sound was soft and steady. Lyra noticed patterns quickly. He memorized star maps easily. He solved complex battle simulations faster than trained generals. But he struggled with sudden changes. When plans shifted quickly, he became overwhelmed. So Lyra created structure, clear schedules, Quiet rooms. Soft light crystals instead of bright flame torches. Slowly, something amazing happened. Arion began speaking more. Not loudly, but clearly. One evening, while looking at a star projection, he said something that shocked her. The western border will fall in 6 months. Lyra blinked. Why? He pointed at small fleet movements displayed in holographic form. Enemy ships are not random. They repeat pattern every 12 cycles. No one sees it because they focus on direct attacks. Lyra stared at the map. He was right. The pattern was subtle, almost invisible. How long have you known this? She asked softly. 3 weeks. Why didn't you tell anyone? Arion looked down. They don't listen. Those 3 words hit harder than any weapon. They don't listen. Lyra requested a private audience with the Emperor. When she presented Arion's prediction, the generals laughed. Until the Emperor ordered verification. 3 days later, scouts confirmed enemy fleets gathering exactly where Arion predicted. The court fell silent. The weak prince had seen what the strongest generals missed. The Emperor looked at his son differently that day. Not with worry, but with realization. However, not everyone accepted this change. The High General began secret meetings. If the prince gains power through this human, he whispered to loyal officers, our traditions will die. Rumors spread darker now. Some servants refused to assist Lyra. Others avoided Arion completely. Fear was growing, not of the prince's weakness, but of his potential. One night, as Lyra walked Arion back to his chambers, the palace lights suddenly shut off. Total darkness. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Arion froze instantly. His breathing became fast again. Not from sound this time. From danger. Lyra sensed it too. Shadows moved ahead. A voice whispered from the dark. Humans should know their place. Metal blades glowed faintly. This was no accident. This was a warning. Arion's claws trembled. Lyra gently placed her hand near his. Focus, she whispered. Count. But this time, the danger was real, and the Empire was beginning to turn against them. Far above in the tower, Emperor Kale stood alone, staring at the stars. He felt something shifting in his empire, a storm forming, and deep inside, for the first time, he feared not war, not enemies, but betrayal within his own walls. The night the palace turned against them. The corridor was dark, too dark. The palace never lost power, not by accident. Prince Arion's breathing became fast and uneven. His claws tightened. His tail flicked sharply against the cold floor. Lyra felt it immediately. This was planned. 3 dragon soldiers stepped out of the shadows. Not royal guards. Their armor carried the mark of the High General. Unofficial. Secret. Dangerous. You should not walk alone at night, one of them said coldly. Lyra stood slightly in front of the prince. Small, human, fragile, but she did not move away. The Emperor gave permission, she said calmly. The soldier laughed. The Emperor is blinded by emotion. Arion covered his ears as one soldier slammed his spear against the metal wall. The loud echo exploded in the narrow hallway. It was done on purpose. His breathing turned chaotic. His vision blurred. Too much sound. Too much fear. See, another soldier whispered cruelly. This is your future ruler? Lyra turned quickly toward Arion. Look at me, she said softly. He couldn't. The darkness. The echo. The fear. It was too much. One soldier stepped closer. Maybe accidents happen in dark corridors. That was the moment something changed. Not in Lyra. In Arion. Through the chaos in his mind, he noticed something. A pattern. The soldiers were positioned in a triangle formation. Their movements were controlled. They were not trying to kill him. They were testing him, pushing him, trying to make him break publicly. He understood suddenly. This was not random cruelty. It was strategy. His breathing slowed just a little. Lyra continued softly. Count, Arion. With me. 1, 2, 3. But instead of focusing only on her voice, he focused on the soldier's breathing. Heavy, confident, predictable. His mind, always searching for patterns, locked onto something else. The hallway lights were off, but emergency fire crystals lined the ceiling. Manual ignition. 5 meters above. right behind the center soldier. Arion's claws stopped shaking. The soldiers noticed. Oh, one mocked. Has the little prince found courage? Arion did not roar. He did not scream. Instead, he acted. A small, controlled spark left his mouth. Precise. Focused. It hit the emergency crystal directly. The hallway exploded with red light. The sudden brightness shocked the soldiers. Arion's eyes narrowed. He had already calculated their reaction time. Before they could adjust, he released a second flame. Not wild, not destructive. Targeted. It struck the metal floor in front of them, heating it instantly. The soldiers jumped back instinctively. Exactly as he predicted. Guards from the far corridor, alerted by the light surge, rushed toward the scene. The three soldiers stepped away quickly, pretending innocence. Training exercise, one said quickly, but the damage was done. Witnesses had seen. The prince had not collapsed. He had not screamed. He had outplayed them. Lyra looked at him carefully. He was shaking again now, not from fear, from overload after action. She gently guided him back. You did it, she whispered. He looked confused. I just followed pattern. She smiled softly. That is strength. News spread fast, faster than before. The prince defended himself. He used strategy. He lit the corridor without panic. The High General was furious. His quiet test had failed. Instead of proving weakness, it proved control. The Emperor summoned the three soldiers immediately. They denied everything. But Emperor Kale was not blind. His massive claws gripped the armrest of his throne. You thought darkness would expose weakness, he said coldly. Instead, it exposed something else. Treason. The soldiers were removed from duty. Publicly. The message was clear. The Emperor stood with his son. But that was not the end. That same night, Emperor Kale went to his son's chamber. He did not enter loudly. He stood at the doorway, quietly. Arion was sitting on the floor, staring at a holographic star map. Lyra sat nearby. Why do they want me to fail? Arion asked softly. Lyra hesitated, but the Emperor answered from the doorway. Because some fear what they do not understand. Arion looked up slowly. Am I wrong? The question struck the Emperor harder than any weapon. For years, he had feared this moment. The moment his son would doubt himself. The Emperor stepped fully into the room. Massive, powerful, but his voice was softer than anyone had ever heard. No, he said firmly. You are not wrong. Silence filled the chamber. You see things others miss. The Emperor continued. You think differently. That is not weakness. Arion studied his father carefully. You are not disappointed? The Emperor paused. For the first time in his life, he chose honesty over pride. I was afraid, he admitted. Not of you. Of losing you to a world that does not listen. Lyra watched quietly. This was more powerful than any battle. The Emperor stepped closer and lowered himself slightly. Not a full bow. But enough. You are my son, he said. And one day, this empire will need your mind more than my fire. Outside the chamber, hidden in shadow, the High General listened through secret surveillance. His eyes hardened. If the prince gained confidence, if the Emperor fully supported him, the old dragon traditions would change forever. And he would not allow that. The palace was no longer divided quietly. Now it was a battlefield, not a fire, but of ideology. And most dangerous wars are the ones fought inside the throne room. The assassins who chose the wrong prince. The attack did not begin with fire. It began with silence. Too much silence. On the day of the Galactic Unity Summit, the palace was full. Alien leaders from 7-star systems had arrived. Warships floated in the sky like dark clouds. Security was tighter than ever. The Emperor stood proud on the central balcony. Prince Arion stood beside him. Calm, focused, different than before. But danger does not always knock loudly. Deep below the palace, in the energy core chamber, something shifted. 3 coded signals. Unauthorized. Hidden inside official transport ships. The High General stood in the command room, watching security screens. He said nothing, but his eyes were cold. This was not a test. This was a reset. If the prince failed publicly during a real crisis, the Empire would demand change. Suddenly, the sky above the palace flashed white. An explosion ripped through the eastern defense tower. Screams echoed across the royal courtyard. War alarms roared. Foreign delegates panicked. Energy blasts struck shield barriers. It was not a small attack. It was organized, precise. Inside the throne hall, chaos erupted. Guards rushed in every direction. Protect the emperor. Seal the lower gates. Prince Arion froze. The alarms were too loud. The lights flashed violently red. Multiple voices shouted at once. Too much information. Too fast. His breathing began to break. The emperor spread his wings and leapt into the sky, blasting incoming enemy drones with controlled fire. But on the balcony, Arion stood alone. Lyra reached him quickly. Arion, she said calmly, even as explosions shook the walls. Focus on me. He covered his ears. The sound was unbearable. Then, something strange happened. Through the chaos, he noticed something. The attack pattern. The enemy ships were not targeting randomly. They were circling, closing in on one specific location. The western shield generator. If that fell, the entire palace defense would collapse. He turned toward Lyra, struggling to speak. Not random, he whispered. What? They're pulling us away from Westcore. Lyra looked toward the tactical screen inside the hall. He was right. The strongest forces were distracting the Emperor in the sky. The real strike was lower, hidden, strategic, but the generals inside were too busy fighting visible threats. They did not see the pattern. Arion's breathing was still uneven, his body overwhelmed, but his mind was clear, clearer than ever. Lyra leaned closer. You see it, don't you? He nodded slightly. Then we move. I can't, he said, panic rising again. Too loud. Lyra grabbed his claw gently. Close your eyes. Ignore the noise. Just follow the pattern. He shut his eyes tightly. The alarms faded slightly in his mind. He pictured the palace layout. Every corridor, every energy line, every security door. He had memorized it all long ago. The attackers would enter through maintenance shaft 47B. No one guarded it heavily, because no one expected it. He opened his eyes suddenly. Basement corridor. Now, Lyra didn't question him. They ran. Behind them, no one noticed the prince leaving the balcony. Deep inside the palace, smoke filled the lower halls. Two masked dragon assassins moved toward the western generator core. Silent, professional, explosives ready. They did not expect resistance. They definitely did not expect the prince. Arion and Lyra reached the lower corridor just as the assassins planted charges. Arion froze again. The tight hallway, the flashing emergency lights, the ticking device. Too much. One assassin turned and saw them. Target acquired, he hissed. So that was the truth. The attack was never only about the shield. It was about the prince. Lyra stepped forward without thinking. Run, she shouted. But Arion did not run. Instead, he noticed something small. The explosives were linked wirelessly to a central signal device on the assassin's wrist. If he destroyed the wrist control, the chain reaction would fail. His body trembled violently. Every instinct screamed at him to hide. But another thought pushed forward. Pattern. Weak point. Solution. He inhaled slowly. One breath. Two. The assassins lunged. Arion moved first. Not with wildfire. Not with rage. With precision. A narrow flame shot from his mouth, thin like a blade. It hit the control device exactly. The metal melted instantly. The explosives blinked red, then died. The assassins stared in shock. Before they could react again, Arion slammed his tail against the corridor wall, triggering emergency lock protocols. Heavy blast doors crashed down between them. Guard from upper levels rushed in seconds later. The threat was over. Arion stood there shaking. The lights still flashing. The noise still painful. Lyra rushed to him. You stopped them, she whispered. He looked confused. I just removed signal. Above them, the Emperor felt the shield stabilize. He looked down toward the palace core and understood immediately. Someone had stopped the real attack. When he landed inside the lower corridor and saw his son standing there, alive, breathing hard, but victorious. Something inside the Emperor changed forever. The generals arrived, stunned. The prince saved the generator, one said quietly. The High General watched from the shadows. His plan had failed. Worse, the prince had not broken. He had risen, in front of witnesses, in front of enemies. The story spread across the empire within hours. The autistic prince stopped an assassination. The human helped him. The dragon heir fights with mind, not rage. That night, the emperor stood alone beside the massive window of the palace. Stars burned quietly outside. He had once feared his son would not survive this world. Now, he feared something else. The empire was changing, and those who feared change would strike again. But this time, the dragon emperor was no longer afraid for his son. He was proud, and pride in a dragon king is far more dangerous than fear. The trial of fire and truth. The empire did not celebrate. It questioned. Yes, the prince had stopped the assassination. Yes, he had saved a shield corps. But power in the dragon empire was not given by quiet victory. It was proven by public dominance. Within days, the High Council called for something ancient. The trial of fire. It was an old tradition. When doubt rose about an heir, the heir faced open challenge before nobles, generals, and foreign leaders. If the prince refused, he would be declared unfit. If he failed, the empire could demand a new successor. The high general stood proudly when the announcement was made. "This will silence all whispers," he said loudly. But his eyes held a different meaning. This was not about tradition. It was about humiliation. The trial of fire was brutal, loud, explosive, designed to test aggression and control under pressure. Everything Prince Arion struggled with most. The emperor sat silently on his throne as the council spoke. He knew the truth. This was a trap. If he refused the trial, it would look like fear. If he accepted it, his son would suffer. That night, in the prince's chamber, silence felt heavy. Arion sat near the window, staring at distant stars. Lyra stood beside him. "They want me to roar," he said quietly. "Yes," Lyra answered. "I don't roar well." She smiled gently. "You don't have to roar like them." He looked confused. "They will make noise. They will try to overwhelm you. That is the test." Arion's claws tightened slightly. "I don't like loud." "I know," she said softly. "So don't fight the noise." He looked at her. "Use it." The arena was massive. Thousands of dragons filled the sky seats. Foreign ambassadors watched closely. The High General stood in the center of the arena floor. Across from him, Prince Arion, smaller, calmer. The crowd murmured, "This is unfair. He will break. The Empire needs strength." The trial began with a blast of fire cannons into the air. Sound exploded across the arena. Arion flinched. His wings twitched. The general smirked. He charged forward with full force, flames roaring around him. A display of power. A display of dominance. The ground cracked under his weight. Arion did not charge back. He stepped aside. The general's fire slammed into stone pillars behind him. The crowd laughed. "Is he running?" The general attacked again. Louder. More violent. Arion's breathing started to shake. The noise pressed against his mind like heavy metal walls. But then, he remembered. Patterns. Noise had rhythm. Even chaos had rhythm. He focused on the general's movements. Every attack followed the same pattern. 3 heavy strikes. 1 pause. A slight shift of left wing before a right fire blast. Predictable. The general attacked again. 3 strikes. Pause. Left wing shift. This time, Arion moved before the blast even came. The fire missed completely. A murmur spread across the arena. The general's eyes narrowed. He attacked faster, more angry. But anger broke his pattern, and Arion noticed. When the general became emotional, his control weakened. His fire spread wider. Less precise, more wasteful. Arion did not try to overpower him. He let the general exhaust himself. The arena grew hotter, the noise louder, but Arion's mind grew calmer, because he was no longer fighting chaos. He was reading it. Finally, the general launched his strongest attack, a massive wave of flame designed to crush resistance. The crowd gasped. Arion did something no one expected. He did not block it. He dove low beneath it, sliding across heated stone, using the general's own flame draft to boost his speed. In one smooth movement, he reached the general's blind spot. and released a short, controlled blast at the general's back armor joint. Not deadly, precise. The impact forced the general to his knees. Silence fell. Complete. Total. The High General, on his knees. Defeated. Not by brute force, but by strategy. Arion stood there shaking slightly from overload. The noise, the heat, the attention, but he did not collapse. He stood. The Emperor slowly rose from his throne. His voice echoed across the arena. The trial is complete. No war, no anger, just authority. My son does not fight like you. He looked across the crowd. He fights better. The arena erupted, not with mockery, with respect. Foreign leaders whispered in shock. The story would spread beyond the empire now. The dragon heir who wins with outrage. The High General stood slowly, humiliated, but something dark burned in his eyes. He bowed stiffly, but inside, he was not finished. That night, while the palace celebrated carefully, the general met with secret allies. If he becomes emperor, one officer whispered, the old ways end. The general's claws dug into stone. Then he must never sit on that throne. Far above, Prince Arion stood alone on the balcony. Lyra joined him quietly. They were loud. He said, "Yes, but I understood them." She smiled. "That is your strength." Inside the throne room, Emperor Kale looked at the ancient dragon crown resting on its pedestal. For the first time, he no longer wondered if his son could wear it. He wondered who would try to steal it first. Because power does not disappear quietly, and defeated pride is the most dangerous enemy of all. The betrayal that shook the throne. Victory is dangerous. It creates enemies. After the trial of fire, the empire changed. Some dragons began to admire Prince Arion openly. Young officers whispered about a new era. Foreign leaders sent quiet messages of respect. But inside the palace, hate grew sharper. The High General had lost face. And dragons who lose pride do not forgive. They plan. 3 nights after the trial, a secret transmission left the palace walls. Encrypted, hidden inside trade signals. Its destination was shocking. The same enemy faction that attacked the summit. The general was no longer trying to test the prince. He was preparing something worse. Meanwhile, Prince Arion felt something was wrong. He stood in the strategy chamber, studying star maps alone. Patterns were shifting again. Supply ships were changing routes. Border patrols were being reassigned strangely. Too neatly. Too quietly. He tilted his head slightly. This was not random. Someone inside was adjusting military positions. He memorized the movements. He did not accuse anyone. Not yet. He needed proof. Lyra entered the chamber softly. "You haven't slept," she said gently. Arion didn't look away from the map. "The borders are thinning," he whispered. "Why?" "Because someone wants them thin." Lyra felt a chill. "Boo." He hesitated. "I don't know." But deep inside, he suspected. The explosion came at dawn. Not outside the palace. Inside it. The Western Command Wing was destroyed in a sudden blast. Fire spread through military archives. Critical defense data vanished in seconds. Guards rushed through smoke and chaos. The Emperor arrived first. His roar shook the burning halls. "This is treason." Survivors reported something chilling. Security codes had been overridden by someone with highest authority clearance. Very few had that access. The Emperor, the High Council, the High General, before the investigation could move forward. Another shock came. Prince Arion collapsed in the strategy room. Not from injury, from overload. Emergency sirens screamed across the palace again. Too loud. Too much. Smoke filled ventilation shafts. His senses drowned in chaos. Lyra reached him quickly. "He can't breathe properly," a healer said nervously. The Emperor entered the chamber like a storm. He saw his son shaking on the floor, and something inside him broke. All his strength, all his power. But in this moment, he could not silence the noise hurting his child. Lyra knelt beside Arion. "Look at me," she whispered. He couldn't. Tears burned at the edges of his eyes. Not from fear, from frustration. "I saw it," he whispered through broken breaths. "Saw what?" Lyra asked. "The pattern." Even now, even overwhelmed, his mind was working. The explosion wasn't main target. The Emperor stepped closer. What do you mean? Arion forced himself to speak slowly. Command wing destroy, yes. But archives were old, not current. He swallowed hard. Someone wanted distraction. The Emperor froze. Distraction for what? Arion lifted trembling claw toward the star map. Border, Fleet 7. The Emperor's eyes widened. Fleet 7 protected the outer civilian colonies. If it was weakened, millions could die. At that exact moment, an emergency transmission arrived. Fleet 7 was under attack, ambushed, and their reinforcements were too far away. Exactly as Arion predicted. The Emperor's wings spread wide. Prepare immediate jump, he commanded. But Arion grabbed his father's arm. Wait. Everyone stared. Even now, shaking, overwhelmed, he was thinking ahead. If you go with full force, Arion said slowly, enemy retreats. And the Emperor demanded, they want you there. The room fell silent. Arion's breathing steadied slightly as he focused. This is layered. First palace blast, then border attack. They want you stretched. Why? Lyra asked. Arion looked toward the entrance. Because next strike will be here, as if summoned by his words. The doors exploded inward. Armed soldiers stormed the chamber. Not foreign enemies. Dragon soldiers. Palace guards, wearing the High General's crest. Gasps filled the room. The leader stepped forward. By authority of military protection law, Prince Arion is to be secured for the safety of the Empire. Secured, a polite word, for removal. The Emperor's eyes burned like dying suns. You dare? The soldiers stood firm. The High General believes the prince's condition is destabilizing command decisions. That was the moment. The final line crossed. The Emperor did not roar. He did not threaten. His voice was ice. Bring me the general. Minutes later, the High General entered under guard. But he did not bow. You have endangered the Empire, he said boldly. The boy is unstable. Arion, still shaking but standing now beside Lyra, looked at him quietly. You sent signal 3 nights ago, Arion said. The general's eyes flickered for half a second. Small, but visible. Arion continued. You shifted Fleet 7 routes. You adjusted patrol gaps. The room grew cold. You created the weakness. The Emperor turned slowly toward the general. Is this true? Silence stretched. The general's jaw tightened. You are blinded by emotion, he said at last. The Empire needs strength, not sensitivity. The Emperor stepped forward. Massive. Terrifying. You mistake cruelty for strength. Guards surrounded the general. His plan had failed. Exposed not by force, but by observation, by pattern recognition, by the son he called weak. As he was dragged away, the general hissed one final warning. The Empire will never accept him. But for the first time, the Emperor did not doubt. He turned toward Arion. The young prince was exhausted, overwhelmed, but standing. You saw everything, the Emperor said quietly. Arion nodded once. I listen. The Emperor placed one massive claw gently on his son's shoulder. And because you listen, the Empire survives. Outside the palace, Fleet 7 was reinforced in time. The ambush failed. The colonies were saved. The news spread across the stars. The autistic dragon prince uncovered treason and saved millions. But in the silent corners of the galaxy, other eyes were watching. Foreign powers, old enemies. They had seen something new rising in the Dragon Empire. Not a ruler of fire, but a ruler of mind. And minds are harder to defeat than flames. The throne was no longer unstable. It was evolving. An evolution terrifies those who depend on the past. The crown of a different flame. The arrest of the High General shook the empire. For the first time in centuries, a dragon of highest military rank was charged with treason. Some dragons were angry, some were afraid, and some were thinking. But the real storm was not inside the palace. It was outside the empire. When news spread that internal conflict had weakened the dragon throne, an ancient enemy made its move. The Void Dominion, a cold, silent empire that did not use fire. They used silence, stealth, precision. Their fleet appeared the edge of dragon space without warning. No signals, no threats, just arrival. Hundreds of dark ships. Watching, waiting. The Emperor stood in the war chamber, staring at the holographic display. "This is not a raid," he said quietly. "It is a message." Military leaders demanded immediate attack. Strike first. Burn them before they move. The old dragon instinct. Overpower. Destroy. But Prince Arion was also in the room, standing quietly beside Lyra. Watching. Listening. He noticed something strange. The void ships were not in attack formation. They were positioned in a curved arc. Too perfect. Too balanced. "Not invasion," Arion said softly. The generals ignored him. "Prepare a war fleet," one shouted. Arion stepped closer to the display. "They want reaction." The Emperor looked at him. "Explain." Arion swallowed slowly. The room was loud, tension heavy, but he focused on the pattern. "If we attack first, they retreat." And the Emperor asked, "Then they send signal to other outer systems. Say dragons attacked without warning." Silence fell. "They want us to look unstable," Arion continued. "After internal treason, they test us." The Emperor's eyes sharpened. A trap. Political, not military. The Void Dominion wanted the galaxy to see dragons as violent and divided. If the Emperor attacked blindly, the Dragon Empire would lose allies. Trade routes. Trust. The generals shifted uneasily. "What do you suggest?" the Emperor asked. All eyes turned to the prince. Arion felt the weight, the lights, the tension, but something inside him was calm, because this was not chaos. This was pattern. "We do not attack," he said. Murmurs exploded. "Cowardice. Dragons do not wait." Arion raised his voice slightly, not loud but firm. "We send single ship." The room quieted slowly. "A message ship," he continued. "No weapons active. Direct communication." "That is weakness," one general argued. Arion shook his head. "No, it is control." He pointed at the curved arc of void ships. "They wait for aggression. We give them confidence instead." The Emperor studied his son carefully. Years ago, this same room would have crushed him. Now, he was steady. "Prepare diplomatic vessel," the Emperor ordered. Gasps filled the chamber. "You risk humiliation," a general warned. The Emperor's voice turned cold. "I risk wisdom." Hours later, a single dragon vessel approached the Void Fleet. Weapons offline, shields lowered. The galaxy watched. Other star systems monitored the situation carefully. The Void Fleet shifted slightly. Uncertain, they had expected fire, not silence. Inside the dragon vessel, Prince Arion stood beside Lyra and two diplomats. The Emperor had allowed him to lead the communication. A huge risk, or a powerful statement. The Void Commander appeared on holographic screen. Tall, pale, emotionless. "You do not attack," the Void Commander observed. Arion answered calmly. "You did not invade." A pause. "You are different from your father," the commander said. "Yes," Arion replied simply. Silence stretched. Then Arion spoke again. "You test our reaction. We respond with control. That is strength." The Void Commander studied him carefully. "Many in galaxy say Dragon Empire unstable." Arion's eyes did not move. "Those who whisper that hoped we would prove them right." Another long pause. Then something unexpected happened. The Void Fleet slowly shifted formation. From curved arc to neutral alignment. Non-aggressive. Observers across the galaxy recorded it. The Void Commander gave a small nod. "Perhaps Dragon Empire evolves." The communication ended. And slowly, the Void Fleet retreated, without a single shot fired. Back in the palace, silence filled the war chamber. No fire, no destruction, just victory. The Emperor looked at his son. "You avoided a war." Arion blinked slightly. "I avoided a pattern." The Emperor stepped forward in front of the entire High Council. For centuries, Dragon Emperors showed pride through dominance. But this moment was different. He removed the imperial crown from his own head. Gasps filled the hall. He turned toward his son. "This empire was built on fire," he said loudly. "But it will survive because of understanding." He lowered the crown onto Arion's head, not as replacement, but as declaration. "The future emperor stands before you." No one protested, because every dragon in that room had seen it. Strength was not always loud. Power was not always heat. And the prince they once called weak had prevented civil war, stopped assassination, saved colonies, defeated rebellion, and avoided galactic war. Lyra stood quietly near the throne. The emperor turned toward her. "You changed more than my son," he said. "You changed an empire." She bowed softly. "I only helped him be himself." The emperor gave a rare, small smile. That was enough. Years later, history would remember this moment, not as the age of the fiercest dragon king, but as the rise of the quiet flame. An emperor who did not roar first, who did not burn blindly, who listened, who saw patterns others missed. And beside him, always, stood the human who dared to kneel in a hall full of giants. The Dragon Empire did not fall. It evolved. And the galaxy learned something that day. The most powerful fire is the one that burns steady. Not wild, not loud, but unstoppable.